So, welcome back to the weekly market report. I will be making these videos every week to update you on what's going on in the market and where I believe the market will be moving in the next few days. Now, just a few things before we begin. I will not be making recommendations every week because you have to go by the market. If the market gives you money, you take it. You don't force a trade. So I will be making a few recommendations here, but I will not force any trades. So having that said, let's look at the weekly chart for DIA. I'm going to remove all of the lines on my chart. As you can see, there is a gap on the bottom. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention is that I love gaps. Gaps usually are filled on the weekly. An example of it can be seen on the DIA. There were gaps over here which were filled. It took a while, took about 2 years, but it eventually filled. Similarly, the gap here was filled, gap here, and now we have a small little gap here, which I do believe will be filled in by this year or maybe by next year. Now let's look at the daily. Here I do believe that we will be moving up slightly to fill that gap, and then we're going to turn back around to fill the gaps on the bottom. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to draw some lines to show how I think we'll be moving in the future. So I do believe we will go up and then we will head back down. Let's look at IWM. By the way, also just wanted to mention that I do not want to make this trade. I just want to make, it is just a forecast essentially, but I will not be making this trade at the moment. Why? Because there are more opportunities to make money than to risk your money in DIA. Let's look at IWM. Again, look at the weeklies. You will notice there is no gap on the bottom and there is no gap on top either. So I wouldn't be trading this stock at the moment. I would just wait off because there are more opportunities, like I said, so we don't have to force a trade. Here, I do believe this gap is going to be filled in the next few days. You can just short over here and it will go down and you can easily make 4 to 5% on IWM. Easily. So I'm going to leave this forecast here and I will be making a note of it on my notepad. So short. I'll be posting these recommendations on my Patreon page. So if you would like to get these recommendations, you can subscribe to my Patreon page. So short IWM at 190.31 and the target is 181. I'm looking at about a week to 2 weeks to fill that gap. Now let's look at the cues here. Now, as you can notice, there are two gaps at the bottom here, which I do believe is filled, and there's a big gap on top. I think the gap on top will be filled, but it will take a while. I think it won't be happening this year. I do believe first we are going to fill these gaps here, and then we might move up to fill that gap on top. But for now, I do believe that we will turn down. But I will not be making this trade at the moment. Let's look at the S&P. Now here, as you can notice, there is a gap on the daily. There is a gap here and a little gap over here. So this gap over here is highly likely to be filled in the next few days. And there are many other gaps at the bottom as well, which I do believe are very, very likely to be filled. But again, I will not be making a trade on SPX. Now let's look at the entire watch list and go step by step. American Airlines. I do believe that, look, there is a gap here on the bottom. If you notice, there is a gap here. It jumped. It jumped all the way, and now we have a big gap here, and there is a little gap on top. So I do believe that both of these gaps are going to be filled. In which order, we can argue about that. No one really knows. Okay, so this gap apparently was filled. So I do believe that this gap will fill and then we will head back down. Let me just draw that. So I do believe that we are heading back down. So will I be making this trade? Yeah, I will be. I will be shorting this stock over here. Ideally, you should wait until it goes up to about 16.6 and then short it. But if you would like to short it here, that's fine as well, because I do believe that we are heading back down. So let me draw how much you can expect to make. Again, over here, you can expect to make about 4.7%. Let me make a note of it on my notepad again. American Airlines, short at 16.28. All right, let's move to the next one. Let's look at Burlington. So there are many gaps. There is a gap here. There is a gap here at the bottom. There's one more gap here, and there's one more gap here. Too risky, so I will not be trading Burlington. I'm gonna hold off on it. It has gone up a lot, so I think I'm just gonna hold off. Let's look at Citigroup. Let's look at which gaps we have. We have a gap at the bottom and we have a gap on top. Again, it doesn't look too charming. It could go up, it could go down, so I'm not really sure, so I'm gonna skip it. Now here we might have a trade. This is a very good trade actually, because I do believe that we will head back down to touch this support here. So let me move my target up to 15%. Alright, so and let me make a note of it. Again, if you want to follow these trades, I'm going to be posting them on my Patreon page. So you can go and subscribe to my Patreon page. Let's look at, yeah, so let me make a note of it. Entry is going to be at 214.5 and the target is 173. Not 173 actually, we'll change it to 184. So we have 3 trades so far. Let's go on and look for more trades. Okay, let's move on. Crocs. So what's happening here? I believe that it was gonna go down, and it did. You would have made easily 3.5% within a couple of days. So if you want to follow such trades, such trade ideas to make easy money, there are many people on YouTube who will post recommendations, and they will be like, "We will give you 4 recommendations every week." It's not realistic because you have to wait for the trade setup to invest. You can't be forcing ideas. When I look for an opportunity, if I find an opportunity that I'm absolutely sure of, I'm gonna make the recommendation. If not, I will just wait off. Let's look at Dash. So Dash gap down. Again, if you look at my past recommendations, you can see that they would have made good money. The stock was trading over here, and I was expecting it to go fill this gap. That's exactly what happened. So let's look at it again. It did gap down here. So there's a gap here, and there's a gap at the bottom. I do believe that this gap is going to be filled. So what I'll be actually doing this week, earnings are coming up. So what we can actually do is, uh, you can bet a small amount on it, not too big, but you can expect it to fill this gap. Again, easy 5% on it. Let me write that down again. Dash entry is going to be at, and the target price is going to be, so 57.75, and the target price is 61. So you can make about 5 to 6% on it easily. And I made a note of it as well. Again, these posts are going on the Patreon page. Will this gap be filled? Probably, but at the moment we are only
Bulletin
hoping
received.
for this gap to be filled. Let's look at Dropbox now. Okay, what's happening here? Big gap here. Just a note. Whenever a gap, okay, this was not on earnings, but When when a stock gaps up after earnings, you can't expect that gap to be filled anytime soon. When it gaps up after earnings, you can expect it to move up for a while. So again, DBX, it doesn't look like something that I would actually trade at the moment. Let's look at FISB. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Earnings, big gap up. Can it fill this gap? Yeah, sure, but not really something I would trade because it seems to me something like this, like it keeps on moving up. So it's a bit risky. But if you want to bet a little bit of money, then yeah, you could. It could actually go down, not all the way to fill that gap, but maybe around here. Enter this into my notepad. Recommendations will all go on my Patreon page. If you wish to follow, feel free. FXI, I will not be trading this. Groupon, okay, Groupon earnings are coming up. Last time, what happened during earnings? Earnings did not meet expectations, and the stock is still jumped. Yeah, that's not something that I would trade actually. So I think I will just skip it. Hims has been on a run, absolute beast mode. It never filled any of the gaps, just keeps on going up and up and up. Here we have a big gap here, and it is moving towards my target. So imagine the amount of money you would have made if you had followed my recommendation. Anyway, if you want to follow these, do feel free to join the Patreon page. Alright, so here, this gap was filled like I expected, and it moved down. So honest, no. I think I would love to sell puts on it at about $2. Joby Aviation, there seems to be a gap at the bottom, which has not been filled. It has been bouncing off the trend line. So that's not something that I would trade again. Lockheed Martin. This is not something I would trade again. Earnings came out. Obviously, they made a ton of money. Meta. All right. Meta gapped up during earnings. So you can see that. These are the kind of gaps I don't like. Stock jumps up after earnings. They're very hard to fill. It seems as though it will fill the gap, but it may not. There's a very high likelihood that it may not, and it will start to rally again. MicroStrategy hasn't filled this gap yet, moved up quite a bit, and now starting to give back some of the gains. I made this recommendation a while back actually, and I'm going to stand by it. I do believe that we will go back down and fill this gap. How long will it take? I don't know, but it may take a while. So for these kind of trades, what you can actually do is you can sell a put. Yeah, if you do wish to trade it, I wouldn't recommend, but if you would like to, what you can do is you can buy put leaps, and then you can sell puts against it every week or every month. That is one of the strategies that you can do. Yeah, again, it's not something that I would trade. You could sell puts on it. Other than that, I wouldn't trade it. Earnings have been very strong, so you might actually buy it. Hope that it goes up a little bit. Actually, you know what? I might actually buy this one, and my target is going to be about right about there. Let me make a note of it again. I might actually make this trade. Looks interesting. NUE, New Core Corporation, gapped up after earnings. Again, like I mentioned, these gaps are hard to fill. It gapped up, continued to rally all the way till here. So if you shorted it here, hoping for the gap to be filled, you would be very wrong. Moving on, OSTK. So it filled the gap last week. Where will it be going in the future? Hard to say for sure. I would love to sell shorts on it. Would love it. OSTK put for on 18th or 19th. Yeah, so for 19th, let's look at the weekly. You're looking at 0.16. What kind of a return are you looking at? 0.8%. Not that much, but you can actually, it's very, very safe. If you sell few 19 puts, I think it's very safe. But I will not be making the recommendation at the moment. Let's go down. Okay, here is something very interesting. I do believe BFE will be moving up to fill that gap here, but my target is going to be at 5%. So entry will be here, and the target is going to be here. So let me make a note of it. Entry is going to be 43.93, and the target is going to be 46.12. There are a few more that I will go through, and then I will stop. Let's look at PayPal. Right, blockchain. I do believe it will go down, but not something I would trade. Smile Direct Club, not something I would trade. Tesla, world famous Tesla. It gapped up on earnings again. Very hard to fill that gap. It might actually fill that gap, but right now I would not trade it at all because too volatile, too risky. Okay, so Uber, I do believe will be going down, but again, I will not be making that trade. Upstart, no, not really. I will not be trading Upstart either. Walgreens Boots Alliance, yeah, no. And finally, Zillow. Zillow again, not something that I would trade. Too volatile, too crazy. And I think earnings are coming up. Yeah, earnings are coming up. So no, it might actually gap down. Actually, I do believe that it's going to gap down, to be honest. Because earnings have been quite good, but they have been going down. So not really something that I would trade, to be honest. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you would like to get the recommendations, you can subscribe to my Patreon page. Thank you so much.